Hey everyone, and welcome to an operator's blog. In this episode, we will be discussing learnings from going 0 to 1 million ARR as a US India engineering productivity startup. Joining me today is Sudheer Bandaru, founder and CEO of Hivel. Hivel is an engineering productivity platform that provides real time insights from the Git, empowering teams to track delivery health and ship software better and faster. Sudhir has had decades of experience as an engineering leader, as a founder. He started his career as a young developer, rose up the ranks to become the CTO, and has really seen the entire startup lifecycle, right from beginnings in the garage to listings on the NASDAQ. I have, of course, followed Sudhir's journey over the last few years of building Hivel out. And there's a lots to learn from all the experience that Sudhir brings to the table. Thank you for joining us, Sudhir.
Pleasure to be here, Soumitra. Thank you so much for having me here.
Great. So let's get right down to it. So Sudhir, I'm going to kick off with of course, AI, right? The wave that we all are in the middle of, and probably one of the most transformative technologies that we all will see in our lifetimes. So it seems that we are in a very seminal moment, but it's also interesting when I speak to various stakeholders, right? Founders, investors, operators, large companies, that everyone is very unclear on where kind of the durable value will eventually get created. As you are, of course, now building Highwell, and even through your customers, you have actually a very deep insight into how engineering teams are moving, how orgs are evolving, how products are changing. And even as a founder now, of course, you are building Highwell in this new age. Uh, where do you think the most sustainable value will get created in the entire stack, and how are you approaching it as a founder?
Wonderful question to kick it off. It's a question that, it has become the new namaste or hello. AI is everywhere. Right? People who know AI, people who don't know AI. One of the thing about where do you see the value? The biggest value is, first of all, before we see the value, we need to understand that each and everybody in the org has to reinvent themselves, right? While the value may not be clear on day one, adapting to understand the possibilities of AI is more important before you even see the value. There are people who are still understanding or underestimating the power of AI, or reading it, absorbing it, but not implementing it. So I would say the first point is everybody has to become at least 2x or 3x what they were yesterday. That is absolutely possible for everybody. I'm not talking about developers alone. A GTM person, salesperson, operations, customer success, developer, founder, anybody and everybody, right? So then the next value is going to be more about how can, if everybody is becoming 2x and 5x and 10x of what they were doing, then whatever the outcome this particular company or organization is delivering is going to deliver 10x value to its customers. So it's not going to be magical to deliver 10x if each and everybody in the organization is not reinventing themselves to be a 10x version of themselves. That's how I would look at it.
I think the view in the valley seems to be that everyone is kind of at least right now overestimating the impact that AI will create in the short term, but they're underestimating its impact in the long term.
It is absolutely. The overestimation is happening all the way from, in my view, the overestimating is happening from the social media. All the news that you see on social media, if you see that, like, I did this, I did that, I never knew coding. This is greenfield development. These are the people who are doing it for the first time, who did not have access to code and they have the power of coding. A founder today, YC released something that talks about where a designer can be the founder. Right? That is a completely phenomenal possibility that is possible today. Now, where the overestimation is happening is mainly because you think the same greenfield value is going to happen in brownfield places, delivering features faster. It's not easy. It's easy to clone LinkedIn. It's not easy to build a small feature of LinkedIn within LinkedIn. And putting it in front of a customer, it's not that easy. That is where the overestimation and expectation problems are changing, I would say. But certainly, we are not too far from meeting those expectations, whatever the folks are overestimating it today. But just being there and taking one step at a time without having wrong expectations and being disappointed is going to be the mantra.
And in fact, I think one change that I'm seeing in this change relative to at least the last cycle, kind of at least in my career, which was the mobile cloud SaaS social wave that I kind of operated and invested through, is that this time it almost seems like everyone seems to be an early adopter now on day zero, right? Which is I think reflecting in a lot of the revenues coming in. I think how much of it is enduring is what time will tell. I think that will be the litmus test. We'll of course come back to AI in the context of Hivel as well. But let's take a step back. I want to kind of go into your backstory. Typically, I think behind any startup, there is either some core insight, some personal experience that the founder has gone through. And I know you have had a very, very long career as an engineering leader. Take us back to that moment, right? Or that experience where you actually realized and you discovered the core kind of idea behind Hivel.
Great. As a CTO, I was sitting out of Bay Area and managing teams out of India, Africa, and Europe. One time we missed a major deadline with my India team. And instead of doing a standard retrospective, I wanted to do a different kind of retrospective by talking to 5 stakeholders who were part of the missed deadline project. And I heard 5 different answers. I did not know which one to consider, what was the actual reason for it. Then I said, okay, let me start using the data. I cannot be very subjective about it. I went to Jira data and started pulling it. And I said, guys, I'm like, whatever you said, can you show me some data dashboards? And everybody gave me some version of Jira dashboards. One level down in the Jira dashboards, there was a hygiene problem in everywhere. Realized Jira dashboards were useless because hygiene was a problem. As a developer myself, I was not very good at updating my Jira. Right? We like coding, not updating and status updates. And then I said, okay, this is not the problem. Then I need to go to say, where was the actual source of truth? The source of truth is like in Git. Action happened there. And we have the data. It's shouting from there that like, no, I'm here, but we're not listening to it, the signals. Started to write some scripts, pull the Git data. That answered my actual question of like why we missed the deadline. People were writing the code, it was not being shipped. Scope was changing, people were rewriting the same piece of code 5 times. They did not know how to say that they changed the code 5 times. Now, all of these insights, how do you get it? I got super excited. I said, like, no, let me add more features. Let me add more scripts. I want more metrics. Then very soon I realized I was just deviating away from a core roadmap as a CTO for my organization. And started talking to people in the Valley, Notion, Stripe, Uber, LinkedIn. How do you guys do this? I'm like, you have thousands of engineers. I have nothing closer to that. And they all showed me how they have very good analytics tools for people and processes. As engineering team CTOs, we are very, very data driven for everything except our most expensive assets, which is people and process. Then realize why are small companies, even with 2,000, 3,000 engineers, not building it? Again, they ran into the same problem as like distracting from the core roadmap. That's why my aha moment happened. Hey, this is a good problem. We need to democratize the access to such kind of analytics tools for every company. And our mission is to make every company's engineering team a high velocity engineering team. Hence, Hivel was born.
And then typically, there is, I mean, this problem has been around for a while. It's been kind of obviously increasing in intensity. I think the whole Atlassian ecosystem, Jira and Confluence and all these platforms have slowly become incumbent platforms. How did you build conviction on the why now part of it? That okay, this is actually the right time for you as as to take a plunge and start a company from zero to one, because that's like a very big call compared to using it internally within a large company.
Yeah, the timing is very, very important. It's a problem that we all have been struggling for decades now. One, people have always touched it in the wrong direction, focused on outputs like lines of code and number of story points completed and all of those things, that it never worked. Then the COVID happened and people went remote. That was one of the most trigger point to say that everybody wanted visibility. Right? People who were always around you are not around you anymore, and you don't know why they don't ping on Slack and why you are missing deadlines or why the quality is dipping down. Then one is COVID. Two, companies like Google and GitHub have seen this problem firsthand, and they have done a lot of this research around DORA metrics, and Space Framework came into the picture. And the whole engineering community started embracing them really well because we've been deprived of these metrics and objective data to understand the engineering productivity. So the COVID thing, where everybody wanted something like this, and the very objective metrics coming from a very credible institutions or organizations coming together, and me personally facing this problem, I said, enough of firefighting. Now let's go build it, right? So the timing is what I would say I was lucky about and why I wanted to start it, and very happy about the decision now. With AI coming in, how we started off the podcast, everybody wants to know, is AI really showing me value, right? And adoption and outcomes and value are very different. If you accept a suggestion from Copilot, that's adoption. What is it? We are not saying how many acceptances. What you wanted is like, am I shipping more features? Am I shipping faster? Am I shipping better? That's what we want as leaders when you invest in the tools. And that data is available on Hivel today. And that is something that's become a big hit on Hivel, where you can show the adoption and outcomes of your AI investments.
Yeah,
Right?
that
The story for the need for the data has always been there. What data comes in is something that could change with AI, but the visibility and objective nature is something very critical for any organization to work in this distributed edge.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's a continuum of disruption starting from kind of the pandemic time, which led to completely changing the way how work is done, how orgs are structured, and now you have with AI now just a different level of intelligence and capability. So it just seems like Hivel is just like very very rightly placed in the ecosystem. I want to pick your brains on a couple of things because as a venture investor, I spend a lot of time with 0 to 1 founders, right? And especially cross border, and they face very unique challenges, compared to a lot of other founder personas. So starting with, finding those early adopters or design partners, right? And again, classic scenario, especially in, I think, the space that you operate in, right? Where a lot of the founders are very strong engineers and they're very strong in terms of building products out, but they are not necessarily people who have done a lot of sales or have even like built networks. Being outgoing or creating social media content is not something that comes naturally to a lot of these people, right? What are some of the things you have seen work well in terms of really finding those early design partners, especially as a engineering persona founder?
Yeah, that's a very classic problem. I personally went through that whole trap myself as a builder's trap, right? When you have access to the code, when you have access to the ideas are abundant, you want to continue to build them. And we easily see that, like, once I build this next feature, I'm going to hit 1 million customers. But that's never true until you talk to the customer and listen to them, and they say that they really want it, not what I think they want, right? So one of the things I forced myself this time as a founder, once I got the basic MVP, very, very basic MVP, I forced myself and deleted the IDE on my computer, first of all. I only had access to my SQL queries so that I can pull the data, but I don't want to write any code. Now I'm coming back to writing code. That's a different story now, right? Because I want to make sure I'm like, no, I stop coding so that I do something that I cannot delegate. And the first customer that we got uh, for more than $50,000 deal, we had hardly 4 screens, only 4 screens. And we really showed them what we have. And there was a lot of work for the man behind the curtain. What we told them was like, you need visibility. I'm going to give you the visibility. It's going to be in the product. It's going to be in the form of Excel sheet, Google Slides. Leave that to me, please. I'm going to give you the insights and I'm going to give you the story, what you really need. And that's what, that's what exactly what we need to do. We need to force ourselves to kind of go put it in front of the customer and see what exactly they want. Since the first 4 screens, everything else on Hivel is a very customer driven roadmap. Even today, we challenge ourselves to say that, even if we have the greatest of the idea, we built it on prototypes, on bold and lovable, we put it in front of the customer. Is this what you're thinking? If yes, then we do it. So we remove the business of PRDs completely. We don't do PRDs. Hey, this is what you and I think. I'm like, no, let's go put the prompt, iterate on it, get the prototype, put it in front of a couple of customers, get their feedback, and then it becomes a more real product to build. Until the customer says, I want this, or they give serious feedback, it's not a feature on Hivel.
And kind of just peeling the onion a little bit more on that, right? I think you went more, I would say, mid-market-ish, even large enterprise, right, route. And I think in kind of dev tools, I think your particular problem statement, it applies to even individual developers as well, right? So you could have gone down that kind of long tail PLG-ish type product, and a few kind of dev tool startups have gone down that route. How did you make that choice? Was it driven more as part of the hypothesis where you kind of started with that hypothesis, or was it more of a discovery process of trying various things out and seeing kind of where the pull is?
No, I was very clear. I'm like, like I said, I faced a problem as a CTO myself. And I know this is more of a CTO, CEO, CFO, CXO's problem, who is responsible for the P&L. They are the ones who lack the visibility. Developers do have it, but the CTO's problem, if you have 100 developers, the pain of a CTO is like 100x, right? So I went to the person, I'm like on the top-down approach, because the pain is very intense there. And they have the decision makers. Whereas they're the economic buyers, decision makers, while your developers, management are the power users of Hivel, they are the ones they wanted to, it has to come top down. That's what led me to go there. Some of the mistakes I've done is I went to very small companies in the beginning. While yes, I went to mid-market and enterprises, I thought like everybody who has developers needs these things. Yes, and I talked to the CTOs. They said, yes, we have this problem. What I missed in the early days, again, I come from a CTO background. I'm not a sales guy to understand this whole patterns of band and medic and all of those things. I did not realize what is the intensity of the problem. Everybody had a problem, but I did not know how intense or how is it like your number one problem versus number 10 problem. That I did not understand, wasted some time there, worked with very small companies with like 20 engineers, 25 engineers, chasing them. Hey, you said you have a problem. Let's try this. And like, no, they never converted, or if they converted, they churned very quickly. During that conversation, I realized it's a problem once you cross number of 50 engineers or something. Even below 50, you would still have the problem, but after 50, the pain is very intense. For the first 15, 20, 30 engineers, you know a lot of people, you know what everybody's working on, and that's not the most bigger problem. The moment you cross 30, 50, then you keep hiring people whom you don't even speak to for hiring time. You're trusting on next level managers, not yourself. All of those things, and you're kind of the visibility gets very blurry. So that's how we realized mid-market enterprise customers are like our key, and we started to see good success there. Uh, Built all the bells and whistles for the enterprises to come in from early day one. That's how we were able to get into enterprises very early in the journey.
In that one answer, you have captured so many concepts that I think all early stage founders need to really execute on, right? I think one is the value of focus and very, very sharply identifying your ICP. And how does one do that, which is kind of really going where the most intense pain points are. In fact, I just, yesterday released a podcast with Shantanu Gangal. He's in the fintech software space. He's the founder of Prodigal. And he mentioned something very interesting where he works with very large BFSI companies in the US. And he said, there are so many problems that I can solve. But there's no point if I'm kind of anchoring on problem number 5 in the stack ranking, right? If I'm excited about it. But the idea is to go after the problem number 1, right? Otherwise, you can't build a sustainable company around it.
Gla-
Um, I think coming to the next kind of concept, right, which is MVP. And of course, I think that whole how you build that first V1 has itself evolved a lot, right? As technologies have been changing, and I think now we are just in a different paradigm with the lovables of the world. What are some of the frameworks and approaches that kind of you have used over the years, right, to build out that first minimum viable version? And even now at Hivel, right, like even in terms of building new features out, right? What's your approach been?
Um, Build to validate, not build to scale, right? Imagine a lot of serial entrepreneurs, founders, or CTOs who become founders today. They've seen scale game, right? And it becomes very easy and natural for us to kind of build for scale. The simplest example I'll say is like, no, I've been building microservices for ages now. But when I started Hivel, we started with a monolith, right? I'm like, I know I want microservices, but I know the advantages of it. But at the same time, I know it takes time to get things right. Monolith can get me faster, right? So we need to force ourselves. We are not building to scale. You don't even know, like, More than 50% of the companies pivot their ideas and products midway. Why do you want to build for scale when it's not validated? Right? It can be the most messiest code. You know the best practices. This is not to show off the code quality. This is to show the product value. So that is what we focus heavily on. Even today, my team complains that Sudhir, why don't we do all these great ideas together? And said, like, no. Did the customer say they wanted it? Did the customer say, hey, I want one more feature? You can come up with like 10 features, but you don't know the value of each of these features until the customer want to pay for it or can benefit from it. So today, everything we start with the very MVP version. We try with multiple things. At the same time, we remove features very fast. We build it fast, we remove it fast so that there's less product debt, not only the tech debt. And if nobody's using it, we remove those features. We start lean, we keep it clean. We just do some basic tracking, remove unused features, keep switching based on the data.
Yeah, that is such a good line. I think you've given me a tagline for the episode, which is, build your MVP to validate, not to scale. It is so true. Um, Coming back to AI, right? How is AI impacting now Hivel's product roadmap and also experiences, right? So, I mean, there are now a new set of capabilities that can be built out, right? That's one bucket. And second is, I think, the way customers and users are consuming AI or how AI is manifesting in front of consumers, the front end experiences themselves are changing, right? So that's kind of the second bucket. So on both these elements, how are things changing in Hivel's product and platform now?
Yeah, it's phenomenal in a way how much we can do with AI. Now that because the possibilities are endless, we need to be super clear about what you want to achieve as an outcome. Right now, the biggest challenge is not about lack of ideas or how to execute it. It's about what to execute. Right. So it's become a harder prioritization exercise than ever before. With ideas coming up and like, hey, I can do this. I'm like, no, engineers spend like half a day and say, Sudhir, I was able to do this. Let's go put it outside. No. Right. So big features, what we want to do is like, slightly very, very focused. One, everybody, there's a lot of internal revamp changes internally, both from the org structure, the way the teams are doing the work to use AI and move things faster. That is number one. Second thing is about, like you rightly said, about the interfaces are changing. Hivel is all about dashboards and AI insights. Today, we are building something called Lucy, a chatbot powered deterministic chatbot that would allow you to answer questions, what the leaders are trying to see. So there's a chance that everybody may move from more screens to less screens or no screens. So we are there. We launched it, and it's receiving amazing response. Then the next thing is about all about developer productivity. Throughout our conversations, through these insights and what we have gained through millions of pull requests and hundreds of leaders, companies, discussions is people are taking 1 day to write the code, 4 days to review the code. With AI now, people are able to write the same level of code in 10 minutes, but the review is becoming a bottleneck. People are not using vibe coding just to write more code. You want to ship features faster, right? Just your today, because of the vibe coding, people are coding faster, but not shipping features because review is becoming a bottleneck. So I will realize that through the conversations, and we are launching a AI code review agent. And the way Cursor, Lovable, or any of these tools for AI coding assistants, they lack the evals are broken, right? They don't know what the outcome should be. That is why they hallucinate, they change what you're not supposed to be changing. There are so many memes and stories on Twitter and LinkedIn that talks about I paid $100 for the software and like no, I paid $1,000 for the mess it created. Right. So now code review becomes a critical component. And we are not going to remove the human component completely from it, but we are going to take a first pass at the code review, make sure I'm like, no, the right things are in place. We don't wait for the senior reviewer to come review it. But when the senior reviewer is there, it's all cleaned up. The mess is cleaned up. So we're launching a code review agent, chatbot. Internal processes have changed so much about how people are able to deliver features at breakneck speed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's such a great insight. Code review becoming a bottleneck. And I think now it just seems like, with AI, all these new use cases are getting unraveled, right? And I think the at least I'm kind of very convinced that for all the existing software companies, the TAM is just organically expanding now. So all the companies, I mean, Hivel, if pre-AI was at X, I think it'll be organically its market is 10x now.
Yeah. It is,
Yeah.
right? Right now, you are able to easily go and you have millions of software developers. Everybody needs whoever is using the coding assistant today, all those cursor customers and co-pilot customers, all of them, they need Hivel writing code, reviewing code.
Perfect. Now, moving from product to go to market, and I know this is a point of a lot of interest, especially for US India cross border founders, right? Of course, you had a very specific context. I mean, you had actually spent significant time in the Bay Area in the US, and then kind of moved back. And Hivel is a cross border company. Um, what has been the journey on the go to market side? What are the things that you tried? What did you discard? What worked? What didn't work? And then cut to today, what is it that's working?
Let's see, this is a very loaded question. I'll try to keep it as short as I can. But the general advice is if you are building in India for global, go only for the US customer. Don't sell in India. Your India ICP is not your US ICP. That doesn't apply to Hivel. The reason because we are a DevTool startup. The way GitHub and Jira are used in India, it is the same way it's used globally. Right? Now that changes the complete thing. I'm like, no, we don't build any single feature that is specific to a region. So we are very excluded from the general advice. People talk about cross borders and how to sell, where to sell. So we sold to India, we sold to US, our first customers, and Hivel being a cross border company, very luckily, our customers are also cross border. We have the leader sitting out of the US, team sitting out of India. So that became very unique strength and value to Hivel. And when I'm in India, I meet the influencers here. And when I'm in the US, I meet the decision makers who are having the highest pain point. And these are the people who are executing it. So that gave us a unique leverage to sell both, talk to both US and India and understand them deeper. So that is how we have developed. And today, for us, selling in US versus India is not very different unless you meet the person or something is unique. So me being a US citizen, and like you said, I spent good enough time in the Valley, understanding the culture and persona there, working with engineers in the US. It became relatively easy, I would say, uh, compared to anyone else who wouldn't have lived there and understand the persona better. So we sold both in India, as our first two customers were in India. Our next two customers were in Africa. And then we had customers in the US, and we also have customers in the Europe region.
That's great. Help us understand the funnel a little bit better, right? In terms of how does a customer journey happen with Hivel? What is the sales motion? What's the marketing motion? Is it inbound, outbound? Help us understand some of the GTM motion, especially for kind of a Hivel kind of context, which is still dev tools, engine productivity, but targeting more enterprise-ish, mid-market kind of motion.
Yeah, see, we are relatively, in all aspects, we are a new category. Right. This did not exist like 5 years before. Some solutions like Hivel did not exist before that. Problem existed decades before. Right. Now, people are not coming in searching online to see, hey, give my developer productivity software tools, or software engineering intelligence is what Gartner and G2 calls them. Right. So when people are not searching online, you cannot go inbound. That is why we have chosen outbound as our first target. And when we did outbound, it is a completely pain point based outreach. So we have multiple things that work for us. One is outbound. When we talk about outbound, it's about LinkedIn email calling. The second thing that really worked for us is events and meeting people in person. In B2B SaaS, they say that you need to know the founder behind the software. You need to know the person building it, right? So that's helped us, and we made enough emphasis to make sure we meet people in person and explain and understand the problem. It is beneficial, mutually beneficial. We get to learn the insights about the real problem as we are building out, and also we get to build the trust and relation with the engineering leaders, CEOs, VPs, founders, CEOs, and all. That's how we have done this event till date. We do both events and outbound. Definitely now there is a lot of thought leadership content out there. Recently, last week we launched something called Hivel Pulse, which allows me to share the thought leadership that I'm learning from all the fellow CTOs, engineering leaders across the globe. And talking about these events, next week I'll be traveling from coast to coast, touching from Seattle to Los Angeles, San Jose, Phoenix, then doing Austin, and then going to Charlotte completely. So we are meeting a bunch of dozens of leaders across the US. So this is what is working for us so far, I would say.
And just tactically on the event side for all dev tool founders, out there who are listening, especially cross border, what are some of the events that you would recommend that they definitely attend, especially in the US?
The CTOs are one of those personas. I'm like, no, very hard. They don't travel as much, or they do not have a lot of events like how any other sales leaders or marketing leaders would have, right? So there are very less of them. What I've really realized is there's something, I'm like everything around AWS, Salesforce, Google, Microsoft doing it. There you'll see a lot of these leaders. The second one is engineering leadership focused. There is a Plato event out there in San Francisco. We have seen good results there. There's an engineering leadership conference, ALC, that happens in SFCT every year. These are very, very targeted events, either from any of the cloud providers or these big players where the CTOs are going. And especially if you want enterprise CTOs, that's where they are, right? Um, those are the kind of events. And in addition to all of these things, we host dinners ourselves. We bring in a handful of people and we ensure it's a very small set of people, like 10 to 12 people, CTOs, and have a very authentic conversations because we all struggle with the same problems, and we want a safe space to kind of reach and chat and share knowledge. So those events have worked really well for us.
And then in terms of these events, especially as an early stage founder, pre-PMF, kind of sub 1 million ARR, um, do you recommend kind of getting speaking slots or booths, or is kind of working the room enough? What is the kind of prep that needs to happen? Because there's always this ROI question, right? Especially with kind of Indian startups, right? Your resources are still very constrained. And so how do you get the most ROI out of all these events? Any best practices or learnings there?
See, if it is 1,000 people event of your persona, you cannot cover the whole, meet all the people. Then I would go for a booth. You need to be there. People need to see you. They need to recognize the brand. If it is a persona, is like, for example, you say AWS, right? You may have like 10% CTOs, for example, or 5% CTOs. You don't need a booth. You need to go find out where the CTOs are hanging out on the AWS event. Are they all, what kind of sessions are they listening to? Are the mid-market CTOs? Are the enterprise CTOs? If yes, what are their problems? Digital transformation, cloud transformation, whatever it could be, right? You need to search for those kind of things and see where those CTOs are hanging out and go meet them. So that is how I would do. And especially when large events, when you have less of your people persona, there is like 1 in 10 chances of having an actual CTO walk by your booth or a VP leader, right? So those places I would try to go find where they are rather than having them come to you.
And then I think there's one question I want to definitely ask you, which is around structuring the sales org, right? And this is again, I think your advice will be very relevant because you actually come from a non-sales background. You are an engineering leader and you have been an engineering leader. So I'm sure it was a very new domain to you. How did you go about structuring the initial kind of sales organization for kind of this kind of an outbound motion, splitting across US, India? Do you have local hires here in the US now at this stage? Walk us through kind of the experiments and journey there.
Sales org in the beginning has to be just one person, the founder. Right. The sales org, we did not have any sales org. First 10 to 12 deals, I closed it personally myself, not knowing the ropes of sales processes. I have to do it myself. The reason I was able to do was when I'm very passionate about this whole problem. I personally faced it and I could, the CTOs could resonate with me very easily. And that's how I was able to close the deals. Um, Now, the sales org, when it comes, I would say it's about affordability. To hire people in the US, it's not easy. One is we need to afford as a founder, as a company, young company, pre-PMF. Two, good talent needs to trust us. A founder is sitting out of India and you hire a sales leader with 250K in the US. I'm like, no, they're not gonna trust. I'm like, who is this guy? Can he pay me? right? So that all of those becomes a big challenge, right? Practically. Instead, what I would say is the founder should go camp out in the US, sit close to the customer. So it's okay to do a hybrid where you keep traveling, travel like 2, 3 months a year or 4 months a year. Do instead of doing a long stay in the US, people can do multiple trips, right? Long stay in the US, I feel that people would lose execution speed on the ground here in India. So you cannot, because these are the small teams, right? I'm like, we're talking about pre-PMF, like probably teams are like 8 people, 10 people, and the founder is the one who is making the decisions. There's no process. They don't know what to build for the next 2 weeks. And the founder sits out of the US. You don't know what happens here. So my approach would be to go do the sales yourself as a founder, do multiple trips, alternate months to the US. I travel so much between both US and India because here you're building, there you're selling. You need to be in both the places until you really find out and you know the playbook and what works. You can hire because in the pre-PMF you don't even know who's your ICP. So you need to hire a different person based on your ICP. If you're selling to the developers, your salesperson is different. You're selling to the managers, it's different. You're selling to the CTOs, it's different. If you're selling to SMB, which is a 10K, 25K for a mid-market or 50K and above enterprises is a different persona, right? If you yourself don't know who is your ICP and all, how can we hire somebody? So, long story, but the quick answer is go figure it out yourself. Travel, it's going to be painful, but that's what we have signed up for.
Yeah, I think the founder-led sales shuttling model until you get to that repeatable playbook, right? And then hopefully by the time you have a repeatable playbook, you have PMF, you can raise more capital, um, and then you can kind of start building the team out. I think I see that a lot of founders kind of really coming to that kind of a playbook. So this is very, very helpful in terms of org design itself. I think just at a more company level now with AI, how is that impacting the way you as a founder now at Highville are thinking about functions, roles, teams? Do headcounts go up? Do they go down? Right? Productivity, as you said, I think we opened the pod with that everyone is becoming at the minimum 2x more productive. How is that changing the way you're approaching things at Highville in terms of team structure?
See, I'm not a very big fan of thinking I'm like, no, 2 people, 5 people are going to build $100 million business, right? I keep seeing this, hearing this, but I don't know how that's possible, or maybe at least not for me, right? You need few people. If everybody is going to become 5x, then you hire 5 people, do it becomes 5 into 5, 25. But you bring in 20 people, it can become 20 into 500. So you can still keep the team super lean, but you need enough time to understand what is the repeatable motion to automate. Even to automate it and all, there is a figuring out time. So our current models are about having a very lean teams for every function. We still have every function. We have marketing, we have inbound, outbound. When in marketing, I'm like, no, we have inbound, outbound. We have sales people who have to close the deals. We have customer success who gives the customer success. We have front-end developers, back-end developers, DevOps, everybody, right? But the only thing what is changing is front-end people are writing some back-end code. Back-end people are writing some front-end code. We don't find unicorns every day, right? We always talked about full stack developers being unicorns. Today, what we are able to do is like a backend developer is able to pick up low complexity front end stuff and write it and close it. Similarly, vice versa, right? That is where we are seeing some of the efficiencies. It's not a huge reorg, except that the teams are going to be too leaner. And we would think twice and thrice before we want to hire any position to say what are the bigger areas. We write it down and say how many of these we can build an agent for or automation for, and how can we save time before we hire. But again, when I say hiring, I'm like, no, we are not like a very large organization at this point. In the beginning, it's okay to hire people until you know exactly where to figure out. Taking the stress out of you should not be hiring and having a small team to do hundreds of millions ARR is something that I have a contrarian belief on that at this point.
Yeah, and I think one of my ideas on this is when people talk about the productivity gains, I think there's a very limited view that a lot of people are taking right now, which is more, I would say, throughput. What I feel is that the real magic of AI, which I'm sure is going to start playing out very soon, is now everyone can abstract themselves out and take on higher quality problems. So the productivity is not in
Yeah,
just in terms of, hey, let me push out more code or let me write like instead of two LinkedIn posts, five LinkedIn posts, but the quality of thinking that even the most junior most person in an org can do should be going up, right? So the quality and everything should get up leveled in terms of quality as well, not just quantity.
correct. Especially when you are figuring out so many different things and you have so many choices and so many ideas to execute, you need a lot more brain power perspectives to say the quality of the product and the taste of what you're building. And you need that higher quality thinking, second order thinking to come into the picture. And it has to be some subject matter experts taking these decisions. So very lean teams, but have the experts for all the functions.
Yep, yep. On pricing, are you seeing any changes now? Post AI, are kind of new pricing models being discussed with customers, especially on the ground, right? What are you seeing right now?
Not so much as you hear the noise on the ground. I don't see so much price changes, right? And one of the definite it will change, I believe, outcome as a service, results as a service, all of those things, usage-based pricing and all may come eventually, but there's a lot to figure out. And I think the whole market will eventually change. And like, there are a lot of companies who would lose their revenue by 10x or so if they change their pricing today, right? So there is a bigger problem at the incumbents level. Imagine any of these large SaaS players changing to outcome-based pricing, right? What would happen to all of their revenue tomorrow? So until it is sorted out that there is a definitive revenue with outcome-based pricing, I think it'll take a long time to see those in action. Imagine the ATS companies or HR tech companies are saying, I'm like, we'll only charge you when you hire somebody versus a SaaS. One, the company should be willing to pay 10% or 20% of the salary for an ATS company, not a HR company, versus paying $2,000, right? So those mind shift, I don't think we are there yet, or we have figured it out yet. But definitely, I can see the usage-based pricing or consumption-based pricing or cost plus value-based pricing will continue to happen because AI is a lot of infra cost today. So you need to cover the cost of it. SaaS may be limiting that way. So you can do, there are the GitHub and GitLab model where you can say, this is my cost. I'm like, no, I do 5x of my cost for anything, what I charge on top of this. That is one model I see it could certainly easily happen.
And then specifically in Hivel's case, right? I think your product is creating very direct value, right, for customers. I mean, in terms of it could be cost savings, it could be kind of higher throughput, right? It's very tangible in nature. How have you gone about tying Hivel's pricing and correlating it to the value actually you are creating, right? Instead of the classic SaaS-ish kind of a model, which probably works for a lot of other workflow automation. I think you have kind of a bigger opportunity to actually take a larger share of the actual true value that you're driving very immediately.
See, if we go with the outcome-based pricing, I'm like, we'll be 10x our revenue tomorrow because of the ROI what Hivel is able to show today, right? With our, I'm like, companies who have been using Hivel have seen at least 30% productivity increase. Now imagine a company is spending $10 million and they have seen a 30% productivity increase with Hivel. That's $3 million in savings, right? Now, how much would the company be willing to pay out of the 3 million to Hivel, right? So ROI wise, it's like huge. But can companies start to pay us that way? We still are yet to experiment and see that people will change towards that direction. It also happens to be where you have to be 100% sure about the attribution part. How much of the 3 million is completely coming from Hivel? What are the other tools that they are using? What are the process changes they're bringing in? What is the change management they're bringing into the company, right? So that attribution also becomes a big challenge. Until that is clear, outcome-based pricing becomes a challenge. But uh, definitely something for our code review agent, the outcome or usage-based pricing is something that we are considering and to experiment.
One final question, and I'll put you a little bit on the spot, right? What is that one belief that you have as a founder or something that you're doing differently while building Hivel, right? Which is very counterintuitive, which most people would disagree with in today's day and age. It could be related to AI or anything in general, personal, professional, anything.
Something on top of my head. Founders think I'm like, you have to work 18 hours a day to make a startup work. And I believe it can be 18 or 20 hours. But being in the productivity space, I believe mental well-being and physical well-being is more important for productivity than working long hours. So I ensure that like every year I take a long vacation. As a founder, I'm like, even from year one of Hivel, I've been always taking at least 2 weeks per year on a stretch. And the stretch is more important than taking 2 weeks spread out because it takes me more than 3 to 5 days to unplug seriously from work. Even if I'm not touching work, I cannot stop thinking about work for 3 days, at least even if I unplug. So that's where I do 2 weeks of vacation per year for sure. And there may be some small holidays here and there, but 2 weeks per year is something people have said, oh yeah, founders don't take. I'm like, Bill Gates did not take for 10 years. Sorry, I'm not Bill Gates. This is how my productivity works. And I'm like, every time I come back, I'm so recharged. We launch some big projects. We do some good org design, amazing outcomes, what I have seen again and again when I come back refreshed.
I think uh, in this kind of we live in a very kind of hustle focused world, right? And I think for people who have actually built startups and built companies, we know that these are such long journeys, and the key to success is actually gritting it out and kind of persevering over very long periods of time while maintaining kind of value. And the power of mental health is so important in that, right? And then kind of recharging
Yeah.
yourself, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. And it's actually, as an investor, I kind of try and do that even with my portfolio companies, where when I kind of do these kind of workshops or reviews, I'm actually trying to see, is the founder kind of looking burnt out, or because you sometimes need somebody else to kind of tell you that, and so that you feel okay
Yeah.
about it, because most founders are so hard on themselves.
If the founder is not healthy, I'm like, where you're able to take so many decisions in a day, it's important. I'm like, how the ripple effects will show up in the company and the team and the growth.
So this has been an amazing discussion. Thank you so much, Sudhir, for taking out time. I think B kind of really walking through the details. I think your persona of kind of an engineering leader, doing a 0 to 1 cross border, right? I mean, I think a lot of people will kind of resonate with your journey and your challenges. And thank you so much for taking out time and doing this.
My pleasure, Soumitra. Thank you so much for having me here. And I really enjoy sharing my stories and hope it helps another founder or another CTO who wants to become a founder.